blood work for neurology, mycenia something something test is the name of it. I have urology blood work that had just got completed last week. We have GI blood work that was completed 3 weeks ago and again a week before that. And the blood work that they're asking for, there are two down there. So when I go down to Wentworth Douglas Hospital to do this blood work for my neurology, make sure to tell them the mycenia one from my neurologist and give them my neurologist's name. That way we don't get the wrong one done, because this is the one that has to be done before I schedule and try to jump in, because I don't want to wait till October. The doctor only has a fucking appointment for me again in October. So he says, let's run some blood work and then we'll wait till October. Then October comes around and he goes, well, let's run the same CT scan. Then he says, and we can make another appointment for July. Then July comes around and he goes, well, the CT scan came up fuzzy, so let's do another one. And then he does another CT scan in July. He goes, darn it, I didn't find anything with a CT scan. Well, now that it's November, 2 years later, let's do another mycenia test. Let's do the same test. That's all they do most of the time, because I'm a broke person and my whole medical records have nothing to do with any of my disabilities. I was born with ADHD. My mother gave me an overdose that caused some type of illness in my nervous system. A lot of problems there. After all the abuse I received as a childhood, by the age of 12, I had anxiety and PTSD to the highest level, flashbacks of the works. And then my mother kept on making up mental illnesses about me, traumatizing me as well, getting people to give me drugs I didn't need, having me strip naked in front of people, having people check my asshole while naked for things while just... Why? Because my mother spun a story. I lit one match near some slug slime, but my mother wants to make that into, I'm a fire setter that burns houses down and I like to burn animals. My mother doesn't give any context, and she works it up and works it up and works it up until the doctors think I'm a serial killer or something. My mother tries to work up all of it. I try to show my mother a swimming medal. She said I had an attachment disorder, had kleptomania, and that it must be an African American's medal because I'm not athletic, and that I must be out to get my new adopted mother, who I just met for the second year. I must be out to get her by putting my old last name on this medal. Now, what is the truth? Because remember, that's my mother's fantasy lies. That's just a bunch of lies she spun in her head based on absolutely nothing. The absolute truth is I won that medal in an orphanage. I was in my swim class. I was just the best kid that treaded water. A blonde, like 36-year-old to 31-year-old, 26-year-old to 31-year-old, or blondest brunette, dirty blonde. She came over, said I did the best at treading water, put my name Z and then G, put my initials on the back, and then told me to make sure the other kids don't steal it. So I took the swimming medal into the van. They brought the van back to the orphanage, and I went to my Lego box and put my medal in the Lego box. Now, my name was Zachary with a G as my last name. So, of course, ZG got put on the medal. 2 years later, I'm adopted just got adopted, just met this foster mother that wants to adopt me, and I decide to show her my medal that I won in the orphanage, so I bring it to her. She then decides to turn that into, I am attachment disorder, I'm trying to hurt her, I'm writing a G on the back, I'm a liar, I'm a thief, it must be an African American, snatching the medal out of my hand. I'm crying and crying for weeks on end, screaming that this is my medal, that I won it in the orphanage. Stop stealing my medals. What are you doing to me? Why are you doing this to me? Stop stealing my medals. I won that in the orphanage. Why are you making up stories about me? I'm only 5 to 7 years old and my mother's putting me through this. So keep that in mind. My mother loved telling stories, and that caused a bunch of problems with my health. Why? Well, for one, she was giving me pills that I didn't need. She was giving me pills I wasn't prescribed. She was giving me extra medications that are never prescribed at a full bottle dose. She's doing crazy things that can cause serious harm to her child. She can make her child permanently disabled with the actions that she's doing. If you give your kid a full bottle of medicine that you're only supposed to measure out a spoonful of, that child might have esophagus and stomach issues for the rest of his life. He might have a disability for the rest of his life. If you drug your child at the age of 5 or 7 with massive amounts of drugs, what happens usually is your kid will be made disabled. Well, that's exactly what my mother wanted. She wanted to make me disabled. So I was born with ADHD. She created PTSD and anxiety. She ended up ODing me and causing all different harm that's caused some problem in my nervous system. I've been spending 25 years suffering from, that people ask me about, that teachers ask me about, that doctors ask me about. But my mother would just move me to a new state and keep trafficking me from state to state to state to state to state whenever doctors catched on. So, if you want to know my actual illnesses, a neurological disorder, something really fucked up from my stomach for 20 years. So, stomach and esophagus, 20 years of suffering. Neurological disorder, 25 years of suffering. Those have been bothering me ever since my mother made those choices. As far as my original born disabilities, ADHD. I was super hyper and I couldn't concentrate. That's it. That's all I was born with. That's all that they were treating. That's all anybody saw. The only person that ever said otherwise was my mother. And then after other people said that she was nuts and tried to help me, she trafficked me and made sure that nobody would be able to get involved. By the time she moved me back to Chelmsford at the age of 12 years old, my mother had me so fucked up, so broken, so drugged, so poisoned. I've already had a seizure in the middle of the woods of New Mexico in winter with nobody there to help me. All the other kids are inside. I'm left there for 2 hours because I'm unconscious after the seizure. Do you think anybody got me to the doctors? Nope. Nope. Instead, my father sued the shit out of them a year later and took the money and put it in his bank account. That's what I got. You think they brought me to the doctors and got me help for this shaking, the bumping in the furniture after my father moved? No, he wanted to sell his house in Gunkwit. He decided to move me from there, sue their asses, win a bunch of money, put that money in his bank account, and then make more money selling a bunch of houses in Gunkwit, Maine, while I go without an education, without a doctor, without health care, without medicine for a whole nother year. So, of course, when I finally try to look into this on my own at the age of 24, 23, 20, when I want to know information at the age of 18, 19, nobody's willing to. Not my mother, not my father. No, of course they're not going to take responsibility or talk about this then. Now they just want me to shut up. They want to call it a fantasy, even though there's plenty of people that heard it for themselves. If this is a fantasy of mine, it's also a fantasy of my sister, because I heard her hear my mother say that she gave me extra medications. And when I asked the question to my mother, who knew exactly what I was talking about, when I said, do you think it's okay to give a 7-year-old child extra medications like you did? My mother said, yeah, so what? I gave you extra medication, so what? And then I asked everybody in the room, does anybody else hear this? And does anybody else think that this is wrong? And my sister said, now she was in her 50s, she knew. She heard my mother say that. She heard what was going on in front of her, and she said it was wrong. So if it's my fantasy, if I'm just making up that my mother gave me extra Epicac, then why the hell did my nephew have to watch it? Why did my nephew cry and was afraid to visit the house? Why did I remember a ruler hitting me on the side of the face? Why did my nephew talk to me about this ruler? Why did doctors talk to me about my illness? Why did I go to ballet for a coordination issue? Why did doctors talk to my mother and father about a coordination issue? Why did I go into physical therapy so many times? Why did I go into speech therapy right after the overdose? Why right after an overdose is the teacher bringing me into the hallway, asking me why my body is suddenly different all of a sudden? I ask, what do you mean? She goes, well, you're writing differently. Your hand seems to be shaking. And the way you talk seems to have a higher pitch to it and you're stuttering. You weren't like this all last week or the week before that. Did something change at home? Has something changed at home? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on. All I took is the pills. My mother says, take these pills. And I lost my sight. And I told the doctor everything. I told the doctor everything. I told everybody the truth. I've been honest with everybody around me. I don't understand why I'm still hurting. And then I get to hurt for another 25 years. My mother continues drugging me to the day she dies.